If you feel unmotivated, distracted, or like nothing excites you anymore, then chances are your dopamine system is likely fried. So in this video, I'd like to give some words of advice on how to reset your dopamine so that life starts feeling exciting again. If you're new here, hello and welcome. My name is Cooper, and I'm a recent college graduate documenting my journey as well as giving advice to you all here on this YouTube channel. So if that is something you are interested in, feel free to stick around. Before giving advice, it's important to analyze the actual problem and the cause here, and to do that, we have to understand exactly what dopamine is. So the first thing I want to do in this video is kind of give a brief overview of what dopamine actually is and the purpose it serves in our bodies. So first off, what is dopamine? Put simply, dopamine is the brain's reward chemical. It is a chemical released by the brain into the body in order to reward certain actions and to get us to do them again. It is a mechanism, it is an incentivizing bodily mechanism. And so when you do things that are good and your brain releases dopamine, it encourages more of that behavior. And so giving that outline, it's important to understand that dopamine often gets a bad rap. It is often talked about negatively and like it is a bad thing inherently, when that is a misconception. Dopamine isn't necessarily bad because it is necessary for things like motivation. It promotes good behavior. However, the caveat is that it is very easily taken over and abused in the form of overstimulation. Piggybacking off of what I just said, living in modern society where science has progressed extensively in terms of our understanding of our bodies, and in this context, dopamine, marketers have learned to adapt and adjust their marketing in order to take advantage of normal body chemicals in order to tap into primal instincts that were once meant for, good in terms of promoting good behavior, and now have, turned them into a means to get you hooked through addiction, right? And so a common phrase that we use to describe modern life is the concept of feeling overstimulated. When you go into a big city or you watch commercials, everything is about being as loud and as present and as obnoxious as possible. And the whole point is to overload your brain's, dopamine receptors and to get you hooked on whatever it is that they are selling. In this regards, there are a vast number of things in today's society that trigger this overstimulation and are a product of this advanced new dopamine addiction level marketing. Things like junk food, social media, and streaming devices. The average American checks their phone 96 times per day. 96 times per day. And the effect that this has is, in a normal individual, in a normal human body, say dopamine is here, right? We do an action that, warrants a dopamine release. Our brain releases those chemicals and it falls back to a steady baseline level. That's what we call it, the baseline level of dopamine. When you're overstimulated, your brain releases way more dopamine than it normally would. And in effect, it overcompensates by reducing the number of dopamine receptors. And so what that inherently causes is a dopamine crash and for you to fall below baseline. And what this causes is a slippery slope in which every time you fall below the baseline, you need greater and greater and greater amounts of stimulation in order to get back to the same peak that you started at. Now, the harm that this causes in the way that we interact with the world around us is quite obvious and quite negative. As we consume more artificial things, more things that are designed in order to, take over our dopamine responses and overstimulate us, we develop an underappreciation for the real things in life that were meant to be enough for us, right? We are feasting on the addictive candy of marketers. And in turn, we learn to not enjoy real food. we learn to not appreciate and take for granted the actual real things in life that have evolved and that were designed to meet our needs. So, in response, how do we actually reset our dopamine and be able to start living in a way that we actually start enjoying the real world instead of the fake artificial world? Well, the first common myth is that you can't delete dopamine. Now, what do I mean by that? What I mean is that you can't just take off the amount of dopamine you get from certain things, but what you can do is you can reset, you can alter your sensitivity to dopamine by lowering your level of stimulation. And so how do we do that? Couple options. One thing you could do is do a full detox day. What does that look like? Things like going a day without tech, without junk food, just doing the basic things like walking, journaling, reading, cleaning. Another option is a partial detox. If you don't want to go all the way, you can do a partial detox, which means cutting 1 to 2 high dopamine habits for maybe, let's just say, a week. So examples, no phone until noon, no sugar for 7 days, etc., etc. Now the point here is to replace our high dopamine, low rewarding habits with low dopamine, high reward habits. And so when we lay out these detox goals, it is important to understand that we have to treat this like any other form of addiction, right? We can't just simply cut it out and expect to be fine and dandy like nothing ever happened and we'll just go back to normal. That's not what's going to happen. You're going to crash. You're going to feel the longing to feel that overstimulation. That's why it is important to slowly, take a step down each day, each passing week, setting out a schedule, if you will, in order to kind of get off this overstimulation high. And so what this can look like is building new habits. Building new habits will help fill the hole and fill the gap and make you feel more productive, because it's in the end, it's not about depriving yourself. It's about choosing good, healthy, natural rewards that don't fry your system. And so even just 10 minutes of exercise per day, according to Harvard Health, can increase your dopamine and serotonin levels. And like I mentioned earlier, replacing the social media habits and junk food habits with things like consistent exercise and reading, meditation and or prayer, and learning new skills. All of those things have been proven to help regulate your dopamine and give you a lower, healthier baseline while also giving you a high reward habit foundation. Going back to the sustainability factor, my last point I want to talk about in this video is the whole idea of making this truly a sustainable effort, right? No one's saying you need to deprive yourself forever from certain things that you enjoy, things like fast food or Netflix. The point is simply changing the habit and changing to a healthier lifestyle, because I think we can all admit that eating fast food every day, binging Netflix every night for hours on end, having your phone, having social media be the first thing you look at in the morning and the last thing you look at night, it is not a healthy thing to do day after day after day. And so the point is to build a sustainable campaign and a sustainable effort in order to reset your levels and establish a healthy baseline. And so one thing that can really help in this sustainability effort is to create rules for yourself. Things like scheduled social media time, scheduled screen time. You can go into your settings and you can set time limits for apps, set time limits for phones, so that you get notifications on when you've hit a certain time and it's time to put down the screen. Another one is no screens for the first hour of waking up or the hour before going to bed. That is something I try to do more of, but however, I lean more into the red light part, trying to lower my stimulation in terms of from a blue light perspective. Another one is to make it a game, right? Pair fun dopamine with earned dopamine. So an example of this could be, you only get to watch Netflix after writing 500 words or reading 10 pages. Finding ways to turn it into a game so that every time you hit a goal, you're being productive, but you also get to reward yourself and enjoy life a little, because that's also very, very important. And so to recap here, you can't live your life without dopamine, but you can certainly stop letting it control you. And so my call to action for you all out there is to try to reset, one aspect of your dopamine this week. Pick something like your Netflix, social media, your junk food. Pick one thing you want to try to lower your level of stimulation from, and try to turn it into a healthy habit. Even for just 24 hours, just set a goal for yourself and watch how much better you feel in terms of your focus, your motivation, and just your general enjoyment for the day. And with that, that is all I had for today's video. If you found this video useful in any way or just found any satisfaction from it, feel free to stick around on my YouTube channel, where I post new videos every Tuesday and Friday at 12 p.m. Eastern Time. And with that, I will see you guys on the next one. Godspeed.